3 Men and a Woman. Chapter 2. Mahazen was not the first woman whom Mahmud knew, loved, or considered marrying. He had a prior relationship with a wealthy girl from the city. Initially, he was unaware of her wealth, and it wasn't a concern for him. However, Mahmud held 2 beliefs. Firstly, he considered it humiliating for a husband to be poor while his wife was rich. This didn't mean that a wealthy woman had to give up her wealth for her husband's sake, but rather Mahmud believed that a man's dignity and honor were best preserved if he married a woman of equal financial status. Secondly, although he was an engineer by profession, Mahmud preferred to be a journalist. He believed that being a journalist suited him better and was more beneficial than applying his knowledge to engineering work. However, his father objected to this career choice, refusing to spend on his education for a profession that might not bring him success in life. Nevertheless, Mahmud persisted, and he struck a deal with a newspaper to compete for a journalist position. He won and received a card that allowed him access to the field without having to pay the usual entry fees, essentially becoming a journalist certified by the racing card. Now he finds himself believing that a journalist should not marry. Had it been up to the law, the profession of journalism would have been a cause for bachelorhood, similar to some diseases. Mahmud knew nothing about horses and had no desire to learn. He considered horse racing events as social gatherings, beauty contests, and a place for everyone to meet. He didn't focus on the horses themselves, but on the people attending the races. Mahmud encountered one of the regulars he often saw at the races, and the man asked him without any greetings or pleasantries, "Which horse are you betting on?" Mahmud replied, "How should I know?" He genuinely didn't have any knowledge about horses and their racing abilities. However, he had a friend among the trainers who regularly provided him with the names of winning horses. So, he placed bets based on that information, without understanding why one horse would win over another. The man laughed, saying, "Choose any horse, even if it has only 3 legs. It's enough that you select it." The man then asked, "Do you win?" Mahmud replied, "What do you mean?" The man continued, smiling, "I mean, you were born, and in your mouth, there's a silver spoon." He winked at Mahmud and walked away. If Mahmud had been secure and certain, he would have choked the man for his insolence. 2. At that time, Mahmud hadn't secured a government job yet. His father was still making efforts to help Mahmud become a respected journalist, not just an amateur. When the horse races moved to Alexandria, Mahmud followed them there. One day, he decided to rest on the sands of Gelium Beach after swimming for about an hour. Drowsiness almost overcame him as he lay on his back with his arm covering his eyes. Suddenly, he heard a soft, melodious voice saying, "By Allah, that's high." The voice made him feel as if he was at home, in his own bedroom. On his bed, Mahmud was dreaming about something when he suddenly noticed a girl with a parasol standing over him, observing him as if he were a strange animal washed ashore. Confused, he asked, "Excuse me, who are you? Do I know you?" The girl laughed and replied, "No, you don't know me, but the parasol does." Mahmud sat up, and to his surprise, he found himself under a large striped parasol that he hadn't noticed before. He was exhausted from swimming and overwhelmed by the effort it took to reach the shore. He was about to apologize to the girl and ask for forgiveness when she gestured for him to stay put. She said, "Don't go, just move a little. The sun is scorching." He made some space for her, and she entered the shade of the parasol, explaining that some young men were following her and making her feel uncomfortable. Mahmud remarked, "They must be crazy." She playfully nodded and continued speaking. She had a mischievous smile as she said, "I thought of using you as my certain madman to keep them away." Curious, Mahmud asked, "Certain madman?" She chuckled and said, "Nothing, never mind. Carry on." Unfazed, Mahmud asked, "Isn't there anyone with you here?" She replied, "My mother, but she doesn't leave the cabin. You can see it from here." She pointed towards the cabins. Mahmud, somewhat intrigued, commented with a long sigh, "She seems to be patient and enduring." The girl asked curiously, "What do you mean?" Mahmoud hesitated and said, nothing, never mind. Continue. She smiled and said, thank you. By the way, what's your name, and pardon me for not addressing you properly. Mahmoud replied, would you believe me if I said my name is Mahmoud? She responded with certainty, why wouldn't I believe you? Mahmoud, she repeated, lifting her eyebrows, isn't one name enough? Mahmoud said, believe it or not, my name isn't a secret. I don't feel the need to write it on a board and raise it on a flagpole. I don't think it's of much use to you anyway. So, here it is, Mahmoud Fahmy. She introduced herself, saying, I'm Samira. Mahmoud advised her, listen, the best way to protect yourself from these crazy men is to get into the water and swim. She thanked him and replied, that's the last thing I can do. I haven't learned how to swim. I can only stand or sit in shallow water and splash around with my hands. Then they come and offer to teach me to swim. Mahmoud exclaimed, you disappoint me, by God. She laughed and said, why? Is swimming so essential? Mahmoud continued, I don't think you can even float, let alone swim. Samira smirked and retorted, listen, Mahmoud, I'll call you that without any formality. Your conversation amuses me, and the most amusing thing about you is that I don't amuse you. Clear? Mahmoud replied, your figure is beautiful. Samira inspected herself and asked, don't you think I'm too thin? Mahmoud glanced at her and said, yes, a little. I had a schoolmate with a similar figure, and I used to tease him every few days. But your legs are beautiful, there's no comparison, really. Trust me when I say that no girl these days can achieve anything without beautiful legs. Samira said, that's what I tell my mother every time she says my clothes are too short. It seems like we might agree on some things. Mahmoud advised her, don't be hasty. Samira playfully responded, don't disappoint me, please. What do you do for a living? 2. He replied, I'm a journalist. If you want specifics, my job is to go to the racecourse and describe the human group, not the group of horses gathered there. Samira responded, you don't seem like one. Do you know that journalists are heavy people? Anyway, my mother still invites them to her parties, I don't know why. Perhaps she imagines that what they write about her parties will help me get married quickly. But the truth is, I don't want to get married. Do you know what I wish to do today? I want to go to the cinema with someone like you, who doesn't flatter me and won't try to woo me, and then have a sandwich filled with falafel. Mahmoud said, why not? I'm not busy this evening. Samira apologized, I can't, unfortunately. My mother arranged dinner with a mayor we know, and his son, Hafiz, with protruding teeth and hazel eyes. He stammers too. I'm afraid I might end up marrying someone like him just to escape these boring conversations and proposals. Mahmoud asked with a hint of humor, do you want to become a mayor? Samira laughed and replied, I just want to avoid meeting anyone who wants to marry me. Mahmoud tried to encourage her, saying, there must be many who don't want to marry. Don't lose hope. Samira countered, but many others find me attractive. Mahmoud advised, don't believe them, they're deceiving you. Perhaps they flatter you and assume you're wealthy, and they're after your money. Samira said, but I am wealthy. Mahmoud exclaimed, ah, the puzzle is solved. Curious, she asked, don't you find me beautiful? Mahmoud replied, I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm not fond of dark skin. 3. This was just the beginning of their encounters. They met again on the beach in Jelm, where they both frequented. Each time, they would be surrounded by their respective group of friends. On one occasion, Samira prepared a bag similar to a school bag but made of fine leather. She took out some sandwiches and invited Mahmoud to share them. She said to him while biting into her sandwich, listen. Mahmoud replied, go ahead. I'm listening. Samira continued, I had an idea. Do you want to spend the rest of the summer in Lebanon? Mahmoud replied, I wish. But I can't. Samira said, you can. Mahmoud said, really? How?
Samira explained, leave the sandwiches for me in exchange, as I like them.
Mahmoud said, the favored guest, Miss Samira.
Samira persisted, listen.
Go to Lebanon with Maulana Baba Buba, Jafana, and Ida Minasawana. These phrases are nonsensical and playful. Mahmoud humorously responded, didn't I tell you my eyesight is keen and my reach is short? What do you want to offer me, a good loan or a gift? Samira said, no, I offer you marriage. Mahmoud said, so you're the one who didn't want to get married?
The proposal is declined, and the rejection comes with advice, see a doctor immediately. Samira continued, listen, don't be hasty.
Mahmoud replied, me? Me, hasty? Samira said, yes, listen. You marry me, and I marry you. Mahmoud understood, a mutual marriage. It's not one-sided. Again, I say, may God open the way.
Samira said, but my mother agrees.
Mahmoud remarked, that's wonderful.
Then let her marry you.
Note, the text appears to be a playful and whimsical dialogue between the two characters, Mahmoud and Samira. The names of the food items and phrases they use are nonsensical and meant for fun.
She said, you are selfish and cruel, and your heart is like stone.
I know that you don't. I know that you don't like me, but I don't.
He couldn't help but laugh, and she continued, I want something from you.
After our marriage, you will be free. You can live your life as you wish, go wherever you want, and do whatever pleases you. All I ask is to be free from the wolves that surround me and the endless courtships. And if, by the will of God, I find a suitable man, I will ask you to divorce me so I can marry him. So, what do you think? Don't you want to help me? Don't you want? He interrupted her, saying, all I want right now, immediately, is a glass of cognac, if there is any here. He didn't marry her because he couldn't convince himself of this crazy act, and he realized he should avoid meeting her to avoid temptation. The summer passed, and winter came. The racing scene moved to the island and Misr el-Gedida, Heliopolis. There, Mahmoud met her again, accompanied by a young man he didn't know and didn't pay attention to. She invited him for tea at her house, but he declined. She insisted, saying that she wants to introduce him to her fiancé, someone she had talked about a lot. Mahmoud asked, who might this be, and she pointed to the young man. Mahmoud was surprised and said, this creature? She said, he is not a creature, he is Hamdi, and he loves me and adores the ground I walk on. He said, clearly. Do you want me to congratulate you? She asked, why not? Can't you say something nice? He replied, on my life and head, I don't value words. Congratulations, and congratulations to him. She said, don't mock me. He said, what can I do when you throw yourself at this good-for-nothing? She replied, he is not a good-for-nothing. He is an employee. Besides, I didn't throw myself at him, He cut her off and exclaimed, this is outrageous. He is deceiving you, this scoundrel. She said, he is not a scoundrel. Listen, don't be rude. Besides, he loves me. With his foot tapping, he asked, and what about you? What is your opinion on him? She replied, didn't my mother tell you? I hope this helps to complete the translation. If you need further assistance or have more text to translate, feel free to ask. He said, yes, she told me that I'm dumb, blind, and made of soft cheese. She laughed and asked, isn't that funny? Don't you think so? He inquired, is that your opinion of the situation? She laughed again and said, I was almost going crazy because you are blind, dumb, and... He completed her sentence, saying, and made of soft cheese. She replied, Hamdi is the ophthalmologist. Mama brought him to open your eyes, but it was necessary to use a scalpel to raise your eyelids. Startled, Mahmoud asked, what do you mean? She replied, taking his arm,
I mean that I prepared a sandwich with sliced roast beef, representative of culture and civilization in the 20th century, sighed and vanished.
As for the elder grandfather, he was shaking his head contentedly, praising Mahmud with the axe. 4.
Life continued its usual course for a few days, and Mahmud went to propose to her. His mother was satisfied and happy that her son was about to become a husband and head of a family. However, she was concerned about the girl's wealth and regretted the money her late husband had wasted.
Before that, she was content and not regretful of the past or anxious about the present.
All she cared about was that her son completed his education and secured a job, which would eventually lead to prosperity and elevation in society. When Mahmud informed his father about his intention to marry, his father was not pleased that his son had taken such a hasty step without consulting him. He couldn't delay his love until he got his desired job. Nevertheless, he understood that in such important matters, it was essential to consult his father and not rush into things.
Moreover, he was still dependent, or rather, he hadn't secured a stable income yet, so why didn't he wait until he obtained the desired job before thinking about choosing a wife?
Why would a wealthy girl prefer a young man with no work or money when she had countless admirers and suitors? If he still had some land left, he wouldn't care about the girl's loss, and he wouldn't be bothered by the disparity between their wealth.
However, even a little was better than nothing, and the key was to be self-sufficient and content with what one had.
With this mindset, a man could maintain his dignity and self-respect and face the girl while standing firmly on his feet, saying that he didn't care about her wealth and influence. Anything beyond what they both needed was surplus, not benefiting either of them. Mahmud's father was sorry that his son had placed himself in this awkward situation.
He didn't approve of what Mahmud narrated to him, with laughter, about Samira and her mother.
He wondered if this was how good girls behaved, and how their righteous mothers allowed such absurdity.
How could they permit such play acting, where a man, who was a servant, was instructed to kiss her mouth, embrace her, and hold her in his arms?
He sought refuge with God from such behavior. Although he reproached Mahmud and advised him to be patient and wait until he obtained a job from one side, and to study the girl's character and background more thoroughly from the other side, he still prayed for his well-being.
However, youth is youth, and Mahmud didn't wait or hesitate.
He couldn't bear to be apart from Samira day or night, and the two families eventually met and got to know each other. Samira's family welcomed the matter, and they didn't suspect that their wealth was a cause for concern for Mahmud's family.
It might have been what endeared Mahmud to Samira.
His apparent detachment from her wealth and social status was what made him appealing to her. Even though he was not better off than many other young men, it seemed that she was attracted to his character and values.
However, Mahmud's family was disturbed by the initial meeting and visit.
They didn't think that Samira's wealth could be a source of worry for them. Perhaps what attracted Mahmud to her was the fact that she lived a humble life despite her wealth. She didn't flaunt it, and her family was content with what they had, which was something that impressed Mahmud.
Mahmud one evening said to his mother, "Why don't you come with me to Samira's house?
If you need further translation or have more text to be translated, feel free to ask." She said, "No, go alone, and take your coat as it's cold tonight."
He replied, "I will do that." Then she asked, "What do you do there every night?"
He answered, "I sit with her, or we go out together to the cinema or something."
She inquired, "Who pays for the expenses?" He asked, "What do you mean?"
She clarified, "I mean, it's not appropriate for her to cover your expenses."
He questioned, "Who told you that she pays for anything on my behalf? Do I need her money to take her to the cinema?"
She said, "Don't be angry, I was just concerned."
He asked, "Do you not like her?" She replied, "You are mistaken. It's not that I don't like her, I just don't think she's suitable to be your wife."
He got upset, snatched his coat, and said firmly while leaving, "There's no point in this discussion.
I will marry her, and that's it." Mahmud didn't share any of this with Samira, and what could he say to her? Should he tell her that his parents don't approve of her as a wife? And what if she took it to heart and acted on it? But that was impossible.
He consoled himself with patience until he secured the job, and then he would have the freedom to make his own decisions.
One night, after a long outing, Samira asked him, "What would you say to Mama when she sees you returning in the early morning?" He replied, "We were just talking." She laughed, hugged him, and drew her face close to his. Her body shook with laughter, but that wasn't all she did. Suddenly, Mahmoud froze and stepped back, gazing into her eyes, and asked, "What do you mean?" She looked surprised, shook her head questioningly, and he continued, "It seems you are tired of my company. Otherwise, why would you ask me what I would say to my parents when I return from your place? What would make you think that? Are you implying that I would say something about you?"
Apologetically, she said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way."
"I was just wondering." He asked, "Do you not want to be with me?" She calmly and softly said, "It's not right for me to interfere between you and your parents." He insisted, "But that won't happen." "Why do you think it's possible for that to happen? Won't I get married someday? How does it concern them if my wife is rich or poor?
It's my life, not theirs, and I don't need their assistance once I have a job."
"I won't abandon you."
She gently extricated herself from his embrace and said with a composed tone, "I don't want to ruin the relationship between you and your parents."
He said, "But that won't happen." "Why do you assume that it will? Don't you think I will marry someday? How does it matter to them if my wife is wealthy or not?
It's my life, and once I secure the job, I won't need any help from them."
It seemed that something occurred to her, and she laughed, saying, "You won't abandon me, Mahmoud?"
He, overcome with emotions, pulled her close again and kissed her passionately, while she laughed and struggled to break free, but he was unwilling to let her go. He seemed almost afraid of a hidden side of her that he couldn't see or reach. Afterward, he released her, and she seemed to be hiding something from him. He suspected that there was a concealed aspect to her that he couldn't perceive or uncover. Then she told him, while fixing her hair, "You better go now." He rubbed his eyes as if awakening from a dream, fully aware of her presence, her warmth, and the allure of her youth. He contemplated kissing her again, but she quickly stood up before he could encircle her waist. She said, "Please, go now. It's almost midnight." He said, "I'm sorry, Samira. I should have left earlier." She said, "Don't say that, but it's better for you to go back home. I fear that your mother might have suspicions about us spending so much time together at night." He eagerly approached her and said, "Why should we care about her thoughts, good or bad? Aren't we going to get married?" She replied, "Please go now." He kissed her lips, bidding her farewell at the door, but he felt a heaviness in his chest as he left. He kept repeating to himself, "Aren't we going to get married?" He had the feeling that she didn't hear him when he asked, as he caught his foot on her sentences. The question resonated like a musical tune in his mind. He visited her in the morning but didn't find her, so he left her a message. In the evening, her mother was dining alone, and she signaled him to sit down. He placed his hands on the table and asked, "Where is Samira?" Her mother hesitated for a moment before answering, "She traveled." With a composed demeanor, she showed no emotions on her face, appearing like a calm sea. He asked, "Traveled? Where to, and when? Why?" She leaned on the table with her elbows and said, "Aren't you going to sit? What's with this annoying stance?" He insisted, "I want to know and be assured." She moved her head from side to side and said, "Assured? Ha! What kind of a man are you?" He sank into the chair, struggling to speak, but she beat him to it, saying, "This is better. At least, I can relax my neck." He asked, "Doesn't it relax me too?" She said, "She traveled tomorrow morning. I found out from the servants. As for where, I don't know. And why, only God knows. Are you satisfied now?" He asked, "How can I be at ease when I don't know where she is and—" She interrupted, saying, "Yes, do whatever you want. The world is vast. Go and look for her."
He exclaimed, "How can you say that?" She retorted, "Oh, what a man you are! Why didn't you hold on to her? Instead, you let her fly, and you even encouraged her to do so. Can you tell me why your family opposes marrying her? Why do they dislike her so much? Forget your family and tell me why you were so stubborn, refusing to let her spend a penny while she was with you? Is it because you're not capable of providing for her financially? Is this not a selfish and foolish pride? How can you both live happily if you continue with this tiresome arrogance? What good can come from it? Do you think she's better off without you? What will you gain from it? You ask me where she is and why she traveled. I was fed up, and I exploded. I realized that life with you would be hell for her and for you, for your mother and your father. Are you satisfied now? Do you understand? I never stopped scheming, hoping that you would be my son, but I was disappointed. It's all in God's hands. My life has been a series of shattered hopes, and I no longer care. Good and evil are equal to me. You think she's an old chatterbox, but the truth is you don't know. You see me enjoying the blessings, but do you hear me saying, "Oh, what's the use?" I have it all, but what good does it do? Hold yourself together, my dear. Maybe I should tell you about Samira. She decided to marry the agricultural supervisor at the estate. So prepare for a shock. I thought I should tell you, although I knew it would disappoint you. I had hoped you would be my son, but I was wrong. The matter is in God's hands now. All my life, I've had dashed hopes, and I no longer care about anything. I'm content with good and evil. Do you think someone like you can understand anything? I had my suspicions, but I restrained myself, so speak. Mahmoud struggled to compose himself, urging her to tell him everything. He kissed her head and hands, but she sighed, lay down, and said, "If you must know, be prepared for a shock. I pitied you for what you'll experience, because you're made of soft cheese. That's my opinion of you, as you know, but you're a good, honorable, and modest boy. I had hoped you would be my son, but I was wrong. It's all in God's hands. My whole life has been a string of shattered hopes, and now I no longer care about anything. I'm content with good and evil. You may think she's an old chatty woman, and you're right in your own way, but you don't really know. You see me enjoying all the blessings and hear me saying, "Oh, what's the use?" Do you think I can make you understand anything? But I'll humor you. Let's talk about Samira. She traveled to the estate. Her decision is set to marry the agricultural supervisor. You should prepare yourself. I thought I should tell you, even though I knew it would hurt you. I had hoped you would be my son, but it seems that's not the case. It's all in God's hands. I don't care anymore. Good and evil are equal to me. He jumped up, shaking her, and yelled, "What? What are you saying?" She shook her head, saying, "No, I don't think you'll be able to reach her. Leave it to God." Hope surged within him again. He turned back, shouting, "No. What do you mean? Tell me." She smiled, shaking her head, and said, "No, I don't think you can reach her. Leave it to God." He returned to her, begging her to reveal more, kissing her head and hands. She sighed, lay down, and said, "If you must know, be prepared for a shock. I pitied you for what you'll experience, because you're made of soft cheese. That's my opinion of you, as you know, but you're a good, honorable, and modest boy. I had hoped you would be my son, but I was wrong. It's all in God's hands. My whole life has been a string of shattered hopes, and now I no longer care about anything. I'm content with good and evil. You may think she's an old chatty woman, and you're right in your own way, but you don't really know. You see me enjoying all the blessings and hear me saying, "Oh, what's the use?" Do you think I can make you understand anything? But I'll humor you. Let's talk about Samira. She traveled to the estate. Her decision is set to marry the agricultural supervisor. You should prepare yourself. I thought I should tell you, even though I knew it would hurt you. I had hoped you would be my son, but it seems that's not the case. It's all in God's hands. I don't care anymore. Good and evil are equal to me. He jumped up, shaking her, and yelled, What? What are? She scolded him and shouted at him, saying, Are you crazy? Can't you act like a decent human being? Yes, you, the agriculture supervisor. What's wrong with you? At least he is a reliable man with a sound mind and firmness, capable of handling matters. He replied, But the agriculture supervisor? How can you propose this to me when she doesn't love him? And he held his head in his hands. She said, Whether she loves him or not, what does it matter? I married her father without seeing him or even imagining him, yet I lived happily with him. He said, No, I can't believe that. It's impossible. She said, Believe it or not, that's up to you. He then said, We must stop her. It's not important for her to marry me, but it's crucial that she doesn't marry him, that idiot. She smiled and asked him, And how do you plan to stop her? He said, I'll travel starting tomorrow and try to reason with her. She shrugged and said, Go ahead and travel. He asked, How could you let her travel and not stop her? She replied, That's the point. How could I stop her? No, my sir, that I have no authority over her. She has complete control over her life, and I'm just. But what's the use? Travel or don't travel, as you please, but please don't disturb my peace of mind. I have enough to bear. He left with a troubled expression. The next morning, he boarded the train to the estate, unaware that the train he encountered on the way was carrying Samira and the agriculture supervisor, beginning their honeymoon in Cairo, which was equal to a long lifetime, measured by the heart and the nerves told for the honey. This was his first disappointment and the first earthquake his soul experienced, which had known nothing but joy, confidence, and tranquility. The young, foolish men will never understand that if anyone could glimpse the future, they would choose reality. The experience of life's challenges is a valuable lesson for those who ride through life with youthful enthusiasm. The story continues with the return of Professor Halim to his home. He immersed himself in his books, fantasies, and dreams, alternating between what he expelled from his mind and what he cherished. However, life did not remain stable for him as it used to be. He became like a horse walking on rocky ground, running cautiously yet hesitating as if he was out of control, tossing his head as if trying to break free. He struggled without settling, finding no smooth path, constantly disturbed. This change was due to his departure from the familiar and entering into the unknown, seeking solace until he felt content and preferred it over what he left behind. This is similar to the experience of eating from the tree of knowledge. The blissful state of ignorance or being unaware allows for living a peaceful life. However, when one acquires knowledge and awareness, life becomes turbulent, and the burden of responsibility increases. Regarding Ayed, Professor Halim kept seeing him and spending time with him as they used to do. He did not want to break off contact or avoid meeting him, unaware of what to fear precisely. He felt that he had to continue seeing Ayed to avoid raising suspicion and revealing his secret. He was also careful about meeting Mahassan, knowing that a secret bond was forming between them, and they were supporting each other. She did not realize that her father knew about her ordeal, and he did not expose her. Professor Halim's feelings toward Mahassan were contradictory. He felt a sense of affection and sympathy for her while also being repulsed. He disliked her attraction to Mahmud, but he was also aware that he lacked the courage to confront her directly. He was troubled by her capricious behavior and the ease with which she changed her mind and commitments. He felt that women, in general, were unfaithful and unreliable, which had a negative impact on his perception of Mahassan. Gradually, he distanced himself from Ayed and stopped visiting him at his home. Ayed was preoccupied with his foreign lover, and when he wasn't with her, he was indulging in food, drink, and revelry. The professor, deprived of Ayed's company, found himself feeling resentful of women's lack of fidelity. This led him to cut his visits to Ayed's house.
He had no idea that Ayed's life had changed since he met the foreign woman. She took over his heart and mind, and he was entirely devoted to her.
The professor's suspicion that Ayed was unfaithful made him detest him even more. These events also made Professor Halim detest the idea of Mahmud as a potential suitor for Mahassan. He believed that Mahassan deserved better, and he felt frustrated that he couldn't open up to her about his feelings. He was also angered by Mahmud's deceit and concealment of the truth from Mahassan. However, he struggled with the thought of revealing his secret to her, as he lacked the courage to do so. The professor's internal conflict intensified as he felt that he was unjustly treated by women's fickleness and their betrayal of his trust. He began to resent the lack of loyalty in women, which further fueled his distaste for Mahmud. He felt that women changed their feelings too easily and did not uphold their promises or commitments. As the story unfolds, the professor faces internal turmoil, and his perception of relationships is shaped by his experiences and beliefs. The characters' emotions and actions reflect the complexities of human nature, showcasing the struggles and challenges they face in their relationships. Conclusion of Chapter 2.
As the events unfolded, Professor Halim found himself entangled in a web of conflicting emotions and uncertainties. His encounters with Ayed, Mahassan, and the enigmatic foreign woman left him questioning the nature of love, loyalty, and the intricacies of human relationships. The bitter taste of disappointment lingered, and he grappled with the complexities of his feelings. As we close this chapter, we leave Professor Halim at a crossroads, torn between his desires and his fears, his heart and his mind. Will he find the courage to confront Mahassan with the truth? Can he overcome his distrust and open up to love once more? Only time will tell. To our dear readers, we apologize for leaving you hanging at this critical juncture. The journey of Professor Halim is far from over. The third part of this enthralling tale is coming soon. Stay tuned to uncover the secrets, unravel the mysteries, and delve deeper into the human psyche. Thank you for your patience and support. Until the next installment, keep your hearts and minds open to the wonders that lie ahead. The third part promises to be a captivating continuation of Professor Halim's journey, filled with twists, revelations, and unexpected encounters. Be ready to embark on another adventure with us as we explore the intricacies of love, trust, and the essence of being human. We look forward to sharing the next chapter of this enthralling tale with you. Stay tuned and expect the unexpected. The third part is coming soon.